My name is Emre Kaya. I'm 34 years old, and I used to believe that trust was the most important part of any real relationship. I worked as a senior project manager at a software company in downtown Istanbul, making a six-figure salary that let me live comfortably in a nice Payback apartment. My life felt like a modern dream come true. I was about to marry Elif Demir, the woman I believed was my soulmate, and my relationship with my father, Kemal Kaya, was everything a son could hope for. He was my hero, my guide, and the man who taught me that honesty was worth more than any money. My father, Kemal, was 60, a well-known real estate broker who had built a strong name over 30 years in the Istanbul property market. He and my mother, Aysel, had been married for 35 years. Their love was what I always hoped to have. Kemal was the type of man who still pulled out chairs for women, who kept every promise, and who had never missed a single football match I played in when I was younger. When I introduced him to Elif 2 years ago, he welcomed her into our family with warmth, saying she was like the daughter he never had. Elif was 30 and worked as a marketing coordinator for a small firm in the Levant district. She was smart, beautiful, and loved the same simple joys I did, like weekend trips to Sapanca and debating which place had the best lahmacun. We had met at a friend's barbecue on July 4th, 2022. She fit in perfectly with my family. She joined us for Sunday dinners and holiday meals. My mother adored her. My father constantly reminded me how lucky I was to find her. Everything was falling into place. The wedding was planned for a Saturday in October at St. Yusuf's Garden Hall in Beyoğlu, followed by a reception at one of the luxury hotels owned by my father, Kaya Prestige, Istanbul. We had sent invitations to 150 guests, family, friends, and co-workers. I spent months planning every detail, from the jazz band to the hand-picked wine list. Elif's sister Yasemin would be her maid of honor, and my best man was Bora, my college roommate from Istanbul Technical University. Our rehearsal dinner was booked at Nusr Et Steakhouse, and we had already made a deposit for a honeymoon in Bali. The night before the wedding, I stayed at the Divan Hotel with my father. We were going over last-minute details. Elif was at another hotel with her bridesmaids. Following tradition, we wouldn't see each other before the ceremony. My dad and I ordered room service and sat at a small table in my suite, reviewing the seating plan. He helped me organize who would sit where, making sure everyone would be comfortable. It was a perfect father-son evening. Around 10:30 p.m., my father went to the bathroom, leaving his iPhone on the table next to his coffee. That's when everything changed. I wasn't trying to spy, but a message popped up on his screen and my eyes naturally glanced over. It was from Elif, sent at 10:28 p.m. Thank you for the unforgettable night, Kemal. The way your lips touched every part of me won't leave my mind. Can't wait for next time. You're amazing. As our story stays between us. Attached was a photo. It showed the two of them together in what looked like a hotel room. It was intimate, and it left no doubt. In 1 second, my whole world broke apart. The woman I was supposed to marry in less than 12 hours had slept with my own father. The man I had trusted the most had betrayed me, and betrayed my mother too, who was likely helping Elif prepare for our big day at that very moment. But just as I was trying to process the message, another email notification popped up from the same thread. It was a digital PDF attachment with the subject line, "Final copy, Emre's house transfer for signature." I opened it and felt like the ground vanished beneath me. The document was a real estate transfer form with my name at the top, Emre Kaya, and the property listed was my two-bedroom sea-view apartment in Payback, the one I had bought 2 years ago with my own savings, the place Elif and I had picked curtains and furniture for, the one she had called our forever home. There, at the bottom of the form, was my digital signature. Added 2 days ago, right after a long dinner with my father and Elif, I had signed it, thinking I was just moving it into both our names as a gift for the marriage. But now I saw the updated version showed her name only as the new owner. She had tricked me. Or rather, they had tricked me together. I dropped the phone. My chest tightened. For a few seconds, I couldn't breathe. I felt dizzy, like the air had been sucked out of the room. I stumbled back into the chair, my arms trembling. I stared at the screen like it was a hallucination. Tears burned my eyes, but I wasn't crying yet. I was frozen. My heart pounded so hard I thought I might faint. I felt like screaming. I felt like throwing something. I felt like breaking down right there and then, curling up and letting it all fall apart. But I didn't. I forced myself to stay still. My hands shook violently, but my mind stayed just alert enough to remember who I was. This wasn't a mistake. It was a plan. One that involved my father, my fiancé, and the home I had worked my whole life to build. I reached for my own phone and started taking photos, screenshots of the messages, the photo, the house transfer, the signature. Years in software had taught me one thing: always back up. I wasn't sure what I would do with the evidence yet, but I knew one thing: they were going to regret this, and I was going to make sure everyone saw them for who they really were. When Kemal returned from the bathroom, I had already taken pictures of his screen using my own phone. I stayed calm and told him I was tired. "Big day tomorrow," I said. He patted my shoulder and said, "Get some rest, Olam. Tomorrow will be the best day of your life." The irony almost made me laugh. After he left, I sat on the edge of the bed. The betrayal kept replaying in my mind. Suddenly, little things made sense. Elif's late work nights, Kemal's frequent business trips to Bursa, their strange looks at dinner, the new perfume Elif wore that he once complimented too eagerly. I had been blind. But instead of exploding or calling off the wedding, I made a decision. I would let them think they got away with it, until I exposed them in front of everyone. From midnight to 3 a.m., I planned every detail. First, I uploaded the images and messages to a private cloud server. Then I created a simple web page showing the evidence. It looked like a sweet wedding moments site. Then I made a QR code that led to it. Using the hotel's business center, I printed 200 cards with the code and a note. "Scan for a special surprise from the bride and groom." It looked classy and real, just like something couples hand out at weddings. At 2 a.m., I called my lawyer, Melissa Carr. She had helped me with contracts and real estate before. She answered after 3 rings. I told her everything. "Emre," she said, "I'm so sorry, but what you're doing is smart and legal. Just don't sign any marriage papers tomorrow and document everything." She offered to come to the wedding discreetly, just in case. Sometimes the truth hurts more than any lie. I barely slept. But when morning came, I was calm. I showered, put on my custom black tuxedo, and looked at myself in the mirror. I looked like a groom, but inside I was something else. Just as I was adjusting my collar, my phone rang. It was Elif. I stared at her name for a second before answering. "Good morning, my love," she said in her sweetest voice. "I have a surprise for you." I didn't respond right away. Then, in the background, I heard a high-pitched voice scream from the other room, her younger sister Yasemin, full of excitement. "He's going to be a father. Elif is pregnant." I froze. Something dropped inside me, like a stone sinking to the bottom of my stomach. My hands started shaking again. "Pregnant?" Her voice came back, softer now. "I was going to wait until after the ceremony to tell you, but I just couldn't hold it in." I forced a small sound into the phone. Wow. You're happy, right?" she asked. I could barely speak. "Yes," I said quietly. "We'll talk about it later." I hung up. A wave of nausea hit me. The betrayal was already unbearable, but now she was carrying what might be my child, or my father's. I couldn't think about it yet. Not now. I pushed it to the back of my mind. At the venue, everything looked perfect. The outdoor garden at Kaya Prestige Hotel had been transformed into a floral paradise. Rows of chairs faced a white-draped archway surrounded by green trees and golden sunlight. The guests were dressed in their finest, smiling, sipping tea and champagne, taking photos. My mother, Isel, looked beautiful in her navy blue dress. My father was doing his usual act, smiling and greeting guests like nothing was wrong. I gave the cards to our wedding planner, Janet, who quietly handed them out. She believed it was a sweet surprise for later, but I knew what was coming. My best man had just moved out to make sure all the cards were well distributed to the guests, and I would be the one to activate the codes at my most convenient time. I needed a moment to steady my breath. The pregnancy news from earlier had hit me harder than I'd thought. My legs shook, and my thoughts were spinning. Then I heard footsteps, like someone running. That's when the door swung open hard, and a woman rushed in, bumping straight into me. I caught her in my arms instinctively, and in that instant, the world stopped. She gasped as our bodies touched, chest against chest, her breath caught in her throat. For a moment, neither of us moved. It was as if the air around us had thickened, as if time held its breath. I looked down at her, and my heart did something I didn't expect. It stumbled. Her dark eyes slowly lifted to meet mine, wide and shimmering like moonlight on a lake. She had soft, golden olive skin that glowed in the muted light, and a face that didn't need a second glance to be called beautiful. But it was her expression that struck me, fear. But not the loud kind, the quiet, heavy kind, the kind that lives in someone's chest too long. She pulled back a little, brushing her loose black scarf back over her shoulder. I'm sorry, she whispered, her chest rising quickly. Please, I didn't know this was your room. Her voice was gentle, almost trembling, like she hadn't spoken freely in days. It's okay, I said, still holding her shoulders gently. Are you all right? She took a step back, but her eyes never left mine. We were still standing so close that I could feel her breath. For a moment, we just looked at each other. Neither of us speaking, both of us held in the tension of something unknown. My name's Nihal, she said. I work with the decorating company, but there's someone outside, someone my family's been trying to force me to marry. I saw him here. He's a guest. Her voice cracked. I couldn't let him see me. I had to hide. I nodded without a word and slowly closed the door behind her, locking it with a quiet click. You're safe here. I turned back and she was standing still, staring at me. Not just at my face, into me. And I, for reasons I couldn't explain, stared back. Something passed between us in that silence, a thread, thin but unbreakable. She had one hand to her chest, steadying her breathing, and I noticed the soft shake in her fingers. Without thinking, I stepped forward and offered her a seat. She hesitated, then sat. I stayed standing, my hand on the back of the chair across from her. She looked up again. You're the groom, right? I nodded. She tilted her head, her eyes gently narrowing with concern. You don't look okay. I swallowed hard. I hadn't expected anyone to see me that clearly today. I'm not, I said. I found out last night that my fiance and my father have been having an affair. Nihal's eyes didn't widen in judgment. Instead, she softened, like her heart had just broken with mine. She stood and walked closer. We were face to face again, inches apart. I'm so sorry, she said. That's unbearable. No one deserves that. For a second, I thought I might collapse, but I didn't. I told her everything, about the messages, the photo, the house deed, even the pregnancy announcement from earlier that morning. The words spilled out of me like I'd been holding them behind a dam that had just cracked. She listened. No interruptions. Just eyes fixed on mine, and her hands folded tightly in front of her as though she could somehow hold my pain for me. I feel like a fool, I muttered. I trusted them. Her voice was almost a whisper. That doesn't make you a fool, Emre. It means you loved them, deeply, and they didn't deserve it. We sat together, inches apart. The silence that followed was full, but not uncomfortable. She looked at me again. Really looked. Her lashes lowered, and then slowly lifted as her gaze swept over my face like she was memorizing it. Something in her expression made my heart flutter. Can I ask something? She said quietly. I nodded. Why are you still going through with it? The ceremony? I sighed. Because I want them to feel it, the same way I felt it last night. She nodded slowly. I understand, but don't let it change who you are. There it was again, that gaze, soft but full of power. Her voice, though gentle, carried weight. Don't stain your name with their mud, she said. You're stronger than that. For a moment, I just looked at her. Really looked. And the strangest thing happened. The ache in my chest didn't go away, but it shifted. The confusion, the pain, the rage, it all took a step back. Because of her. Because of Nihal. When I turned, she was standing by the window, a sliver of sunlight hitting her face just right. She looked radiant. But it was her spirit, not her skin, not her scarf, not her figure, that pulled me in. She smiled. Not a full smile, but enough to shake something loose in me. "I don't usually do this," I said, pulling out a business card from my wallet. "But if you ever need someone to talk to." She took it with both hands, the way someone receives something sacred. Then she reached into her purse, tore a corner from her notepad, and scribbled down her number. She folded it and handed it to me with soft fingers. "I think you might need someone more than I do," she said. And I realized, for the first time in 2 days, I wasn't drowning anymore. I was just floating. And somehow that was enough. There was a knock on the door. Sharp, male voice. "Excuse me, have you seen a girl? Late 20s, long dark hair, black scarf. Her name is Nihal." She froze. I stood quietly, pressed a finger to my lips, and whispered, "Stay still." Then I opened the door slightly. "No," I said firmly. "No one's been in here." There was a pause, then retreating footsteps. As she stepped toward the door, I didn't want her to go. I wanted to ask her to stay, to sit beside me just a little longer. Her presence felt like a hand on my chest, stopping the bleeding from the inside. I opened the note again after she left and stared at the number, then at my reflection in the mirror. Nihal's words lingered in my brain, a strong voice. "Don't stain your name." Whenever I replayed them, I felt lighter, calm, warm, and ready to face the congregation. I went and calmly waited at the altar, my mind processing what to say. Then Elif walked down the aisle with his father. When she reached near me, she whispered, "I can't wait to be called Mrs. Kaya." I almost whispered back, "The junior Kaya or the senior Kaya," but I stopped myself. My eyes landed on Nihal in the crowd. Then I heard the question, but none of them knew what I would say. Not yet. The civil officer stood between Elif and me, smiling as if nothing were wrong. His voice echoed calmly over the sound system. "Emre Kaya, do you take Elif Demir to be your lawfully wedded wife?" The pause was long. Everyone leaned in. Even the trees seemed to still. I turned and looked at Elif. She was beautiful, yes. Her hands trembled slightly, and she forced a small smile onto her lips. I could see her eyes searching mine, looking for answers, for rescue, or for control. I didn't answer right away. Then came the second line, louder this time. "Is there anyone here who objects to this union? Speak now or forever remain silent." For a moment, I heard only the sound of the wind rustling the fabric overhead. Then I spoke. Calmly, firmly. No anger, no revenge, just truth. "Yes," I said, my voice steady. Gasps rippled through the crowd like an unexpected thunderclap. Even Elif took a step back. But I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse anyone. I simply turned back to the guests, then faced the official again. "I believe I cannot go through with this." Murmurs grew louder. Janet stepped forward slightly. Yasemin's hand flew to her mouth. Someone whispered, "What is happening?" But I raised my hand gently to quiet the room. "There is no anger in my heart," I said. "No blame to place. But I have to be honest with myself, with all of you." I turned back to Elif gently. "You are an incredible woman. I don't believe you're the love of my life." Her face froze, like glass cracking under pressure. "I thought I knew my heart," I continued, voice barely above the soft music playing in the background, "but it's only now that I realize I may have been wrong." A hush fell again. "I think my heart has started to feel something else, something different, something unexpected." I didn't look at Nihal, but my soul did. And while I don't know what it means yet, I know I would be making a mistake to ignore it. I bowed my head slightly, then met Elif's eyes one last time. "I am sorry, I truly am." I turned to the officiant. "I cannot say yes because to say yes would be to lie." As I stepped off the white aisle and into the open garden beyond, a breeze swept across my face. For the first time in months, I felt light. Not angry, not broken, just free. I unfastened the top button of my tuxedo shirt and breathed in deep. The scent of roses, lemon blossoms, and sea air from the Bosphorus mixed into something that smelled like a new beginning. And in that moment, I did something I hadn't done in days. I smiled. Not because I had hurt anyone, not because I had won anything, but because I had saved myself. I felt proud of the man I had become in those few seconds at the altar. A man who could walk away from chaos without dragging more fire behind him. A man who, instead of exposing shame, chose to protect his peace. But more than anything, I felt thankful. I tilted my head back and whispered silently, "Thank you, Allah, for sending her." Because I knew, deep in my heart, Nihal had been a sign. Her sudden appearance in that room, her words, her kindness, had softened the edge of my revenge and reminded me of who I was before all the lies. I returned to the hotel room later that evening, away from the murmurs and the gazes and the gossip still buzzing below. The room was quiet until the door opened. They came together, Kemal and Elif, my father, and the woman I was supposed to marry. She was still in her wedding dress, though it now looked like a costume that didn't belong to her. He looked older, weaker, as if the weight of everything had finally settled into his bones. They walked in slowly, cautiously. Neither said a word at first. I was seated calmly at the desk, waiting. Without a single expression, I turned my laptop around to face them. The screen showed the messages, the photo, the timestamp. Then I slid a paper across the table, the transfer deed of the apartment, which had already been reversed with the help of my lawyer. They looked at it and froze. Elif's lips trembled. Kemal took a step back, almost stumbling. His eyes darted to hers as if begging her to explain. But there was nothing left to explain. Truth needs no commentary. I stood up, buttoned my jacket, and looked at them both. "I didn't expose you," I said. "You did that yourselves." They remained silent. I turned to Elif, my voice soft but final. "My heart has no room left to accommodate you." She looked shattered. I turned to Kemal, who lowered his eyes in shame. "You taught me about honor, then forgot what it meant." No yelling, no slamming of doors, just quiet truth. "Whatever you two had," I added, "died the moment you made me the fool. But I refused to let that be the end of my story." They still didn't speak. I walked past them to the door and opened it wide. "You can go now." They stepped out slowly, like ghosts leaving a house that no longer welcomed them. And as the door clicked shut behind them, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. And as I stood there alone in my thoughts, my fingers reached into my jacket pocket. The folded paper was still there. Nihal's number. I held it between my fingers for a while, staring at the digits like they were the lock to a new door I wasn't sure I deserved to open. But I dialed anyway. It rang once, then again. And on the third ring, her voice answered, gentle, surprised. "Hello?" I paused, then smiled. "It's Emre," I said. I didn't want to end the day without hearing your voice." There was a beat of silence. Then she said, "I was hoping you'd call."